This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money, you sorry
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add Rough Greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to tryroughgreens.com. Use promo code TRYROUGH. That's TRYRUFF. Go to tryroughgreens.com. Use promo code TRYROUGH. You discover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
From The Athletic, right here, filling in for Barreiro on Bumper to Bumper. Brett Blakemore behind the glass. Very important day for Brett because we get to talk some hockey on the show. But I promise you will not be hockey right till the end at 6:30. Dan Hayes from The Athletic will be joining. We'll be talking a little Minnesota Twins. John Krasinski, draft couple days, not weekend, for the NBA. Obviously, the Wolves made their pick, first round pick last night. The rest of the rounds tonight. John will be coming up here in the second hour as well. Excuse me, a big show. Also, when it comes to hockey, obviously a big day for the Wild as they got started with some of their offseason news, trading Freddie Gaudreau. We'll get into that. We just came from a Bill Guerin presser. Bill Guerin will actually be joining during the 5 o'clock hour, as well as Director of Amateur Scouting Judd Brackett. The draft is this weekend. NHL draft. The Wild don't have a first-round pick on Friday night, at least currently. On day 2 on Saturday, they now have 5 picks after acquiring a 4th-round pick from Seattle today. So they got 2nd, 2 4ths, a 5th, and a 6th or 7th. I don't even care, honestly. Do you care, Brett?
Not particularly.
Yeah, no. There's just something that as I've gotten older in my career, like it's like wake me up when the draft's over and get me into free agency, and that's how we'll be talking about that, especially this year.
First round pick.
Especially this year, not having a first is probably the least interested I've been in the draft in a while. 2-time Stanley Cup champion Nico Sturm will be joining as well, leading up into the Bill Guerin. Nico is somebody that maybe even the Wild look to reacquire in free agency. We will get to that. Joe Smith, my colleague at The Athletic, will be coming into studio as well. And then Chris Johnston, one of the best insiders in the business, he'll be coming on. But as I mentioned, the Freddie Gaudreau trade happened today. It's always pretty interesting, it's always pretty interesting in a day when you make a trade like that and you're a team that needs centers and all of a sudden you trade away a center. And I know that's even been confusing for the fans because, they've been trying to trade. They've been talking to other teams about trading Marco Rossi all summer long. And obviously, Marco is somebody that is a top 6 center that if you're going to replace him and you don't want to get worse next year, you got to make sure that you get the equivalent back, whether it's a center or a winger. And right now, nothing is coming to fruition. It doesn't mean that it can't. Again, July 1 is technically a pressure point if the Wild are at all worried that he could sign an offer sheet somewhere else. But that's something that it doesn't appear that they're worried about right now. They just think that they're going to grind this thing out and eventually come to some sort of deal with him. I've talked to his people, though. They have not been talking for a while. Negotiations haven't been going on. There's obviously a difference in opinion of what he is worth in terms of in terms of there's just a certain number that the Wild like him at, and it's not in the 7 range. And the difference here, the problem is that, when they signed Matt Boldy, that was a couple years ago. They got him on a great deal, but that was a different world. It was a different cap situation. Now we know the cap's going 95.5, 103, 112, and it's going to continue to go up and up and up. So from his standpoint, the comparables now are in the $7 million range. And from the Wild, they have trouble stomaching that, because then it almost paints this picture that he's better than Boldy, that he's a $2.5 million player better than Joel Eriksson-Ek. But it's a different world. That's just the fact of life. Nobody should know that more than Bill Guerin, who had some contract squabbles in his NHL playing career. So we'll see where this goes. But essentially the way it has worked is that the Wild showed right off the hop last winter that they wanted to re-sign him. They offered him a 5-year deal at $25 million, a contract that's very much like Anton Liddell, Dylan Strome, players like that. It was immediately rejected. They countered with a shorter-term deal at a higher AAV, which is probably in the $6.5 million range. The Wild rejected that. They've indicated that like a long-term deal. Then the Wild about 3 weeks ago offered him a shorter-term deal at an AAV less than 5, and that's just something that was immediately rejected. So my guess at this point, it's going to have to be some sort of bridge deal. But because of the way that he was treated in the playoffs and being on the fourth line, I don't know if he trusts signing that deal. But if it's a higher AAV, I think he holds his nose, signs it, and assumes that because he signed at a significant AAV that they're going to put him in a top 6 role. And so we'll see where this goes. But this could very well, because he doesn't have arb rights, Brett, this could take him all the way to a training camp and maybe even beyond. And we have like another Kevin Fiala situation or something like that.
Well, that was going to be my first question, is does he have arb rights, and what does that entail? Because it seems to me that would be the obvious solution here, because there's clearly an impasse where Rossi thinks he's worth this, and you're right, he didn't get treated well at all. Not to mention he was on the fourth line, but even when he was, and they wouldn't put him out there at all to begin with, the ice time itself was just horrendous for him in the playoffs. Yet he still found ways to score, which, by the way, the guy that they just traded today, 0 points in those 6 games.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, the Wild did just make a minor league move. They traded Brendan Gantz, who got some games for them too, Columbus for Cam Butler. Continue.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look more into that. But I don't know. That seems to be the obvious solution. But if he doesn't have the rights, and the Wild probably aren't willing to, cave on their end of things, I think it's weird that, especially because they drafted him. So all the reasons that they are holding him against him, they knew when they drafted him.
Yeah, there's no doubt that you're right about that. I think that what it comes down to, though, is that in today's world, especially coming out of a second contract, you get huge money if you're signing long term. And the Wild, if they're going to invest long term in him, they just don't look at him as a $7 or $8 million player. I think they genuinely, the way that they worked with him in the playoffs shows what they think. And that's that they don't think long term, and in the role that as a top 6 center that they could win in the playoffs on an every year basis with him in that role. So I think that's the bit of an issue that they have here. So what I think is going to eventually happen is they sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal if he's not traded here in the next couple of days. And then it sort of punts it down the path a little bit. We saw this with Marty Necas last year with the Carolina Hurricanes. The two sides were disgruntled last summer. They wanted to part ways. Not that it's at that point with Marco, but all of a sudden they worked out a couple trades, one with Winnipeg, a couple other teams, and he was not willing to sign long term there. So begrudgingly, the two sides agreed to this 2-year deal at 6.5, 6.3, something like that. The Wild will never go that high with Marco. But what it did is it just pushed it down you just knew that still the way that Carolina thought of him and the way that he thought of Carolina, that he was never going to sign that long-term deal. But what it did is it bought them more time, and then they put him into the Mikko Rantanen trade and made a trade. So I think that's probably where this is going to go with Marco, is you sign him for a 2 or 3 year deal. You continue to either get the best out of him on the ice, especially in the regular season, and have him produce for you. And then you continue to maybe look for, if your philosophy hasn't changed, you're not willing to sign him long term, you continue to look for a trading partner at some point, throw him into maybe another package, and then you just push that down the path a little bit. And that's what I think eventually happens here, is that, I don't see Bill Guerin and the staff changing their mind that they don't want to make him a $7-8 million player on a 7-year deal or something like that.
Well, I guess my concern is the good news about the trade today is that it opens up spots for Yurov. And that's kind of what I'm thinking is if we're looking at our centers, right? And if they want to play Yurov at center, you have Ek, you have Rossi, and you have Yurov. And how would that, because some people, I think Ek could still produce on a really good third line like he did, the what was it, the freak line or the whatever it was. I can't remember what it is.
Grief line?
The grief line,
Yep.
yes. Where it was a solid and he was still contributing and still killed penalties and still was winning faceoffs, but he had kind of the skill guys above him. I don't know if you could stomach that of having Ek, because Ek is so good, and I will never say a bad thing about him. But I honestly think he may be better suited with a Foligno, maybe, and with a Hartman, and then let Yurov and let Rossi center the top two.
Right. Or if you can go get another center in the next couple of years, that'd be the way to do it.
That'd be nice.
And I think that's where the Wild want to get to. I think they are hoping that Yurov develops into that, or they can go out and figure out a way to acquire more of a top 6 center, and you put maybe Eriksson Ek more in a role that he's suited for. He's sort of like a 2B, right? He's not a top line center on most teams in the league, but he certainly has more skill and the ability to produce on the second line. But you're right. He's kind of that prototypical, doesn't cheat the game, should be, he could play really well and maybe even bring some offense to that third line. So I don't disagree with you there. My question is, if they don't, and we'll talk to Billy about this, is that if they don't trade Rossi, so now you're coming back essentially with the same team. You just traded Goudreau here today. Now it feels like they're a center short. So now what? What is up his sleeve? Is he praying to goodness that John Tavares gets to the open market and he's going to go and try to offer him the type of contract that Brock Nelson got, maybe 3 years at 7.5? Or is he looking at the trade market? The two guys that I reported on today that I hear the Wild have talked about are JG Pajot with the Islanders, and then Charlie Coyle, who we all know here started his career here, has developed into a really quality two-way centerman. Back then the expectations was he should have been the scorer. Now we all realize what he is. You bring him here and you put him on the third line. That is a really good player. Could kill penalties, win draws. But Pajot is intriguing to me because he's a perennial 40-point guy. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's tough. He plays with energy. He's incredibly good in the faceoff circle. Like last year, almost 60%. He's been at 55% or better for most of his career. Has always been over 50. And he could kill penalties. So I like that idea if they're going to do something like that. And then in the free agent market, if you're going to go out and get a center, there's guys like Nico Sturm, who we're going to have on the show today, who I think would consider coming back here. Sean Corrali, Colin Blackwell, who had a pretty good playoff for the Dallas Stars, and their penalty kill was excellent last year as well, and he can win draws. I think that is one area they've got to address. And then the next thing is, do they have, if they're not trading Marco and they know they got to pay Marco, let's just say it's $6 million. It's going to be less if Bill Guerin has his, if that's his desire. So that now they're at $17 million. You take 6 off, that's 11. Now what can you get in the open market? Could you get a better scorer to put on that second line? Could you go get even a Patrick Kane on a short-term deal? Could you would Brock Besser even consider? I don't think the Wild are going to offer him more than 3 or 4 years max. He could have 5, 6, 7-year deals on the open market. Is he willing to take that over a longer-term deal with more security at maybe a higher AV here? So we'll see where this goes. But to me, it's just really fascinating on how this offseason's going, because the expectation in this town, after waiting 4 years for the large buyout paying to go away, is that they're going to go out and spend money, and there's going to be these fireworks, and as Craig Leopold said last fall, Christmas on July 1 and all that. And it's looking like less and less that's likely. And now the one thing that I think that fans are going to have to accept if we don't get the fireworks that they all waited for on July 1 is that the one thing that having a lot of extra cap space going into the season will allow is for this team to actually get into trade market in season and make significant upgrades in the season. And so that's where I just wonder if they're going to go, and if that what Billy's going to start to try to sell to the fan base is like, look, going into this season, we have something that we didn't have last year, and that's the ability to make moves and eventually go get those guys. So we'll see where it goes. We'll talk a lot about this on the show. But when we come back, we're going to turn our attention to baseball. My colleague at The Athletic, Dan Hayes, one of our two great baseball writers with Aaron Gleeman, he's coming up. As I mentioned, Bill Guerin's on the show. Judd Brackett's on the show. Two-time Stanley Cup champion Nico Sturm. How lucky is that guy? He leaves here and he wins 2 cups in 4 years since leaving here, huh? So that'll be fun. He's actually out in California packing up his life, knowing that he's going to become a free agent. We'll be back here on The Fan.
Before we go, the Fan and BigDeck.com. I'm going to give you a shot to win bonus bucks for the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. The keyword for this hour is bonus. The keyword is bonus. KFAN.com. Keyword bonus.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money, you sorry
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.
Dan Hayes.
The Fan.
Check out our contest page for your chance to win a pair of tickets to the CONCACAF Gold Cup quarterfinal this Sunday at U.S. Bank Stadium between the U.S. men's national team and Costa Rica. Enter now, KFAN.com, keyword contest. I know I will. KFAN.com, keyword contest for your chance to win.
Mike Russo from The Athletic back here on The Fan. If you have any Twins questions, go to the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line for my next guest. You can go 64686. You can text me, and I will ask my next guest, Dan Hayes. Somebody asked, if Vancouver gives Rossi an offer sheet for, say, $6 or $7 million, do we lose him for nothing when they offered a number 15 pick earlier? No, they would... there's compensatory picks involved, so we have to see what the price of the actual offer sheet is, and they would get that, and then they would have a decision to make if they match or not. But my next guest, one of our awesome 2 baseball writers who I happened to see last night at The Athletic with Aaron Gleeman, Dan Hayes. You can follow him on the X machine at Dan Hayes MLB. And Dan, man, I am jealous. You got a fun night in store for you tonight.
Yeah, I'm not upset, and I'm not upset that I'm skipping this rain delay that is ongoing. I'm lucky. Last year, Aaron got all the breaks. Aaron Gleeman would take a day off, and we'd be sitting there for 2-3 hours in the rain delay. It feels like I've not missed a rain delay in like 3 seasons, and there's some rumors going around. I saw one of the media members in the Skyway a little bit ago, and they said there was a rumor going around they might try to start really late, and I just don't envy that situation right now.
Yeah, I texted with Dave Mizutani, who's covering for the Pioneer Press, and he didn't seem very pleased that he was sitting in the press box.
You mean they'd rather be going to the Killers show tonight?
Yeah, exactly. So, man, how do you get tickets to this? So they're playing at the Palace Theater. I can't even imagine seeing the Killers in a venue like that.
I know. Betsy Helfand from the Pioneer Press. It's all her. She knew about this show. It was like a special deal for Wells Fargo credit card holders, and we just happened to get in line like immediately. So Twins Geek will be there, John Bonus, and there will be a few of us. So
wow. I would have loved to have gone. And hey, I have a Wells Fargo credit card. I somehow missed that memo. We're talking with Dan Hayes from The Athletic. Dan is the proud winner of the 2021 Preposterous Statement Tournament Award here on The Fan. What did you say again? It was about standing and...
It was okay. It was about the buildup of spring training players and how they slowly build them up because their bodies need to be conditioned to play 9 innings. And I think I said something about their bodies need to be conditioned to stand around the outfield for 9 innings. And the wording was terrible. It was just terrible. But I still wear my green jacket all the time. And It's a honor. Like, I'll put that on my resume for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think that's probably why you haven't been nominated again, is that you're embracing it too much. Like, I remember one of my first years here in Minnesota, I got nominated for it, and I immediately got defensive about it. And I think they took the opposite tack. They haven't nominated me again because I was such a baby about it. I was trying to, explain myself. You need to embrace it, like Kevin Gorg with the hundreds of pounds. I mean, you have to embrace it.
I asked them for a real trophy. I wanted to do the Stanley Cup and take it from bar to bar like they do, and celebrate with my friends, my new friends.
Yeah.
And no trophy, unfortunately, but that's okay.
We'll get to the Twins here in a bit, and hopefully this rain delay does end anytime soon. But how about that dinner last night? So last night, the Athletic, a bunch of the hires up at the Athletic are in town for the APSCs here. And so they arranged a dinner for all the local Athletic writers. Unfortunately, John Krasinski couldn't come because of the draft. But we went out to the Cabana Club, which is a new restaurant where Vic's used to be on St. Anthony, Maine. And what a great night. It made me realize that we need to do this stuff more. We have this team in town and we never really get to hang out together.
Oh, well, it was amazing because Alec Lewis showed up in a limo and there was an entourage with him. And I was just in awe. Again, that's the first time I've seen Alec in years in person. It was a lot of fun. We do have a great team, and Johnny K did show up at the second place we went on to afterwards. It was just a little bit later, and he got out of draft coverage super late. But a few of us ventured on, and it's a good group, man. I mean, getting to hang out with our old boss Zach Pierce anytime is pretty much awesome. And then Alec is great. And, getting to hang out with you and Joe and Gleeman. We got Gleeman out in public at an event that he wasn't paid to be at. I feel like that is I think right there we that's a lifetime achievement right there. We should put that on our resumes as well.
Absolutely. So Dan, let's talk about the Twins right now. I mean, first of all, you had the big scoop the other day that they exercised Rocco Baldelli's team option for next year in the middle of this season at some point. There were two things I found interesting about it. One, the timing. And two, I love the fact that you closed your mentions on the X machine so people couldn't even whine to you about it and bitch and moan. You just made sure that they couldn't even respond, which then all of a sudden everybody started quote tweeting you with their responses, which is hilarious. But let's get going. What made you block everybody from being able to respond? And two, what makes you think they did it so at that time?
I was having a great day. I was just having a great day. I just did not want negativity in my mentions. Gleeman made a great point, though. When you quote tweet, when you do that and it forces people to quote tweet you, then it's kind of amplifying your post anyways, because they're putting it on their timeline rather than just a straight reply. So I didn't even think about that aspect. But, yeah, look, a lot of times people just want to kill the messenger, and I knew that was not going to be a very popular tweet or story that I sent out. Especially with the timing where they are, the Twins, until last night they had won 1 of 12. Last night was their second win since June 11th.
Wow.
And it's been a rough stretch. And, especially online, Rocco is a sort of polarizing figure. Even though if you go in the clubhouse and talk to the guys, they love him. He's a player's manager. He's even keel. He's built for streaks, bad and good, because he doesn't get too high or too low. And I think that's something that carries a lot of weight with players. I came into Chicago right after Ozzie Guillen left as a manager, and they brought in Robin Ventura at the time. And Rocco is a lot fierier than Robin Ventura. Robin Ventura was pretty, milquetoast is a good word. Great dude, great stories. But, very, very quiet and, kind of boring as a manager. Players were so thankful. They loved Ozzie Guillen. But after a while, the fiery guy, it runs its course sometimes. And especially in the course of 162 games, you want your manager to be the guy that trusts players to do their jobs and is easygoing. And Rocco's got, a really good sense of humor that does not show up on camera because he prefers not to do that. But anyways, he is a polarizing figure. And there's a lot of fans that don't like him. And so I just was like, I'm not going to listen to this. They're going to be mad. They can be mad. They're just not going to wreck my day. I still got some fun replies, quote tweets. It was great. I enjoyed it.
So why do you think they did it at the time?
They didn't do it on Monday.
Yeah,
I got it confirmed Monday. This was done in the last couple of weeks, and that makes sense. 3 weeks ago, the Twins were, 7 games above 500. They were a good team, and they kind of set themselves up for this. If they announced that they pick up the option when they did it, even if the team's right at 500, you get the message out when you want. You control it. And when you don't do that, and they have a policy where non-uniform personnel, they don't discuss contracts. So when you don't do that, you set yourself up, because it then comes down to, if someone like me finds out and reports it, I'm going to report it when I get it. And the timing couldn't have been worse for the Twins. I mean, this is a team that had, I think I wrote it last night, in 9 games of their last 15, they've allowed 6 or more runs. In 8 of them, they've allowed 9 or more runs. The timing was terrible. And so look, I know they're not thrilled with the timing of it. It just happened that way, but they kind of set themselves up for it. And I conversely was not going to set myself up for a long night and turned off the replies.
Yeah. So what's happened here to them the last couple of weeks? The pitching staff especially has fallen on some hard times. What do you think is going on?
I think execution with 2 strikes has gone down and dwindled. Look, anytime you lose Pablo Lopez, you're losing a guy that averaged 190 innings the past 2 years and 215 strikeouts a year over those 2 years. So anytime you take him out, immediately your staff is going to take a hit. There's very few guys in baseball that can replace him at the top of a rotation. You're putting a rookie in there in Simeon Woods Richardson. And then Zebby Matthews, who had shown some signs that he was pitching well and pitched well in Seattle, he gets hurt right after that. And so then you're throwing in David Festa. And both Simeon Woods Richardson and Festa are guys that have shown that it's a little bit of a struggle at times to get through that second time. They'll be good 2 times through the order. And the third time, they're not pitching as well. So you have shorter starts. And then you have more innings on your bullpen. But I think, Bailey Over struggled. Chris Paddock has still been good, but he's not been as great as he was the first 2 months of the season. You throw in that Joe Ryan struggled a little bit. And for Joe Ryan struggling, it was a 3.6 ERA in his last 3 or 4 starts. And this is a guy who was having a 2.25 ERA season. So it wasn't a ton for him. But when you have 2 of your most consistent guys struggling a little bit, and you lose your third big guy, it adds up. But what we've seen is this team still gets in a lot of 2-strike counts. What they have not been doing is executing. They're walking an extra batter per 9. Their strikeouts per 9 are lower. On June 4th, or through June 4th, this team led Major League Baseball in strikeouts to walks. It was a 3-2 or a 3.2 strikeout to walk ratio. That was like a half a strikeout more than the next best team. They're really good at that. And that's how they were pacing themselves. This is a team that had like the 4th best ERA in baseball at the time. Since then, they have the 30th best ERA. They have the 30th strikeout to walk ratio. They have their strikeouts, like I said, they're down per 9 by over a strikeout per inning, and the walks are up by 1 over 9 innings. It's not gone well. They need the consistency that was the hallmark of those first, 62 games or whatever it was.
We're talking with Dan Hayes from The Athletic. And Dan, one bright spot with them continues to be Byron Buxton, 17 homers, 47 ribbies, hitting 279. What has been the key to his success?
Staying on the field and a mature approach at the plate and trusting in that mature approach at the plate. And I just want to get this out there because a lot of fans have this misconception that he can be traded. Byron Buxton has a no-trade clause. It's a full no-trade clause through next season. If you go online and you read stories about Byron Buxton, everywhere in the comments, it's like, we should sell high right now. We should trade him right now. And I get the sentiment, absolutely. But this is a dude who took a lesser contract to stay with the Twins in the $100 million deal he got. He could have gotten far more money than that. $15 million, even when he is playing only 81 games, his value always stacks up to more than $15 million because the calculation comes out to it where a win above replacement is worth about $8.5 million. Even in injured seasons, Byron Buxton in the last couple of years has been producing 2 to 3 wins above replacement, meaning he's producing something like $24 million of value every year. and they're getting him for $15 million. So I get why fans would want to sell high because he's healthy and, they would get a lot for him. But at the same time, he can't go anywhere. Even in 27, 2028, he still can block trades to 5 teams each of those seasons. He loves it here, and they're benefiting from him. With the health right now, he can basically sit on the pitches that he wants to hit and know that he's able to do it. You're not seeing a lot of strikeouts. And earlier in the season, there were a lot of strikeouts for him. He just had a stretch a few days ago that ended, and it was like 72 plate appearances. And in that time, he struck out 12 times, and he walked 9. For Byron Buxton, those are Herculean numbers because he's a guy that strikes out about 25, 28% for his career. And here he was, at 16% and putting balls in play, doing damage, hitting lots of doubles, hitting lots of home runs. And when you throw in the walks, when Byron Buxton walks, it's almost like a double. He's the all-time steal percentage leader in baseball. He's 13 for 13 this season right now. And I think, when you have that, those elements that you can add in where if you're just getting on base, a walk or a single is as good as a double. That's a dangerous combination to have when you can hit the ball pretty well too. And, oh, by the way, he's an elite defender in center field. So the Twins it would be nice for them to be taking advantage of this because he is playing some of the best baseball of his career right now. And obviously they are struggling.
By the way, the one thing you said there that just blew my mind is that a win above replacement in baseball is an $8 million player. That's crazy to me. Like one win.
Yeah, and that's, the market doesn't always align that way. But like you're talking about 6 wins, those guys are worth about $48 million. Joe Mauer, it's funny because there was so much talk about what Joe Mauer's value was after he got the contract. Joe Mauer, for his entire career, outproduced the money he earned, wins above replacement. Obviously, after he got the contract, the concussion changed how that played out. But, he earned every dollar of that contract. And look, this is the world of sports economics that we are just astounded by, right? We see these contracts and it's like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do with all that money? Hey, the owners are paying them. The owners are making tons of money off this stuff, league wide. That's why the huge network contracts exist. And it's a different realm that I don't think that we can really kind of, put any context
to. Well, especially
a
hockey writer.
Yes, exactly.
These guys make money. They make money in obviously the NHL, but they're not. One win is not getting you $8 million in the NHL. That's for sure. Hey, let me ask you. Lastly, you brought up ownership. What is the latest?
So about a month ago, there was far more interest in the team. I think that interest exists to a certain level. I know that it has leveled off. There are people out there that are definitely interested in purchasing the team. I know that one of the groups I am in contact with had said that things were picking up a little bit about a month ago. And I know that around the same time, Phil Miller from Star Tribune said a potential owner toured Target Field. So there's interest, but I think people are balking at the price right now. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be interesting to see how long that stalemate goes on because the Tampa Bay Rays, who don't have a home right now, they're playing at the Yankees single A facility, and their current home, Tropicana Field, is, I guess, they're trying to fix it. But even their future being in St. Pete or Tampa is unclear or elsewhere. And the report came out last week that the Rays are going to be sold for $1.7 billion. That means 2 teams in a row have sold for $1.7 billion. That's the asking price. And Sportico, which is the one that really nails down franchise valuations, has the Twins valued at $1.7 billion. I think a lot of owners are balking. Obviously, the debt comes into play a little bit. We reported at The Athletic, there's $432 million of debt that's been accrued, a lot of it in the last 5 years since the pandemic. That could be playing a role, but I've heard that people are not trying to pay the 1.7. And, basically the Twins got an offer a couple months ago where the valuation was for $1.5 billion. We were told that was a non-starter. So they're clearly waiting to get to the 1.7 range. buyers don't quite want to go there yet. It's a stalemate, and Twins fans are kind of caught in the middle.
Well, hey, Dan, I appreciate it. Enjoy the Killers tonight. Very jealous. And
Thank you.
And we'll be talking to you soon. We'll have to do another big athletic dinner soon.
Absolutely, man. Thanks.
That is Dan Hayes from The Athletic. Dan Hayes, MLB. When we come back, we'll be talking to another great athletic writer, this one going on to the hockey side. A lot of breaking news in the last couple of days, and Chris Johnston has been all over it. We'll be back here on.
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money, you sorry
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.
On the Fan.
Head over our contest page for your shot at a pair of early screening passes to the new DC Studios film Superman in theaters July 11th. Tickets on sale, but you can enter now. KFAN.com keyword contest. KFAN.com keyword contest.
Michael Russo from The Athletic back here on The Fan. Judd Brackett and Bill Guerin still to come. Nico Stern still to come as well. But my next guest, really excited that he's able to join on an extremely busy day for him. Lots of news in the NHL. Jamie Benn re-signed. Obviously, the big Freddie Gaudreau trade. A lot of collective bargaining agreements steam. And he just broke the big Brendan Gaunce trade from the Minnesota Wild to the Columbus Blue Jackets. That is Chris Johnston from The Athletic. How are you?
I'm doing well, Michael. How are you, bud?
Good. That was a huge scoop today.
I don't think it was much of a scoop, but look, it's there's lots of stuff going on around the league, and this is an exciting few days between the deals that I think will go down before the draft on Friday, and then obviously we got free agency on Tuesday. So buckle up if you like transactions.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get to that in a minute. But, a lot of, to me, with draft weekend, but the other really interesting thing going on right now, and you and I just covered the Stanley Cup Finals together, and I think we thought this could have happened a couple of weeks ago, but it looks like the collective bargaining agreement, which is going to be about a 4-year extension, is close to being done. We could even have an announcement of at least a memo of understanding tomorrow. As we know, with these type of things, it could be lawyerized for weeks still to come. But tell some of the listeners just some of the big things that sound like are going to be in this CBA.
Well, the biggest thing you need to know is we've got labor peace through till 2030, which I think is nice for everyone who loves watching hockey, and certainly those of us that work in the business. This wasn't a very contentious negotiation. There aren't really any major changes, I would call them, to the league system, as part of what's contemplated here. But, there's certainly obviously things that are being tweaked in the way things work, going to an 84-game regular season schedule starting in 2026-27, that increases every team getting 2 more divisional games. And the other side of that is you're reducing preseason games. Some of the contract rules are changing slightly. Maximum turn deals are going to be reduced to 7 years with your own player and 6 years with a free agent. No deferred salary in contracts, which is something that we started to see a few teams include in the last 12 months or so. Changes the way signing bonus payments are made. I mean, really, it's not to say it's unimportant things, because certainly everything is important when it comes to the players and the owners. But, the reason we're having this discussion when they're more than a year out from when the previous deal was going to expire is none of these were, I would call, major issues. No one was saying, hey, we want 5% more of league revenue going to the player side or the owner side or what have you. So, it's a great day for those in the business, and it does look like it's finally going to get done.
And I think that you and I would agree on this. Like being around Marty Walsh and Gary Bettman throughout the last month, it is so clear that this is so different than the landscape that you and I are used to in yesteryear with Donald Fair or Bob Goodenow and Ted Saskin. I mean, these two genuinely seem to like each other, respect each other. I for Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final, when Gary and Marty walked into the arena, they were sitting by the elevator with me and just shooting the breeze and just listening to them chat. It's just a different persona, and I think that probably has led to this.
Yeah, I'm sure some of it's just personality based. You might get along better with one person than another. The other part of it too, though, Michael, is look, business is good right now in the league. Yep. I mean, even some of the issues that existed, a year ago, it was just where Arizona was obviously a problem franchise for the NHL, but they had the sale to Ryan and Ashley Smith, moved them to Utah. That's worked out well. The expansion teams have been good. Now you've got 6 different people knocking on the door trying to get in for further expansion in the league. I mean, the money's flowing, and I think it's a lot easier to sort of sort through these issues when everybody's doing well, and that's really where we're at. I mean, we're going to see players make a lot more money here in the next few seasons in the league with the way the cap's going to jump and the fact that there's basically more of a pie to share between owners and players. So, I think part of it is down to those two guys running the respective sides, but also it's a great time for the business.
I totally agree with you. And one big change that's going to happen in the in the CBA that I'm excited about is LTIR, and just having some sort of that loophole closed and some sort of salary cap when it comes to the playoff roster, at least, and what you ice on a given night, so we don't see what's happened here lately that teams like Florida and Vegas have taken advantage of. Moving on, JJ Peterka, we've been talking about that also for about weeks, that it feels like that he has been trying to push himself out of Buffalo before he was going to become a restricted free agent. Clearly, Buffalo felt incentive to try to make that move, and they did last night, sending him to Utah for Kesselring and Josh Doan. I think a lot of people in the league, a lot of teams, including one here in Minnesota, were surprised at the underwhelming return. They obviously were eyeballing a right shot defenseman. I think the Wild feel like they probably offered more with Marco Rossi plus, but it's all relative, and I think a lot of teams felt the same way. Did this move come? We knew that Utah was going to try to do something significant. They immediately sign him to the long-term, to the 5-year extension in 7.7. But did this trade surprise you?
It might have surprised me in some ways. Utah holds the number 4 pick in the draft, and I know they've been dangling that around. And so the fact they were able to get, an impact player in Peterka for their lineup without giving that up was what I'd call a mild surprise. But, you do have to remember, as you correctly point out there, the Sabres really wanted a right shot defenseman. Obviously, they think very highly of Kesselring. Not to mention Josh Doan, who's just, really getting his feet under him as an NHL player to help out their team. And, what's sort of fascinating to me is Bo Byram is another restricted free agent that the Sabres, are shopping around the league. And some teams that were shopping on Byram thought they had to send the right shot D in that deal. And so now that they've got it in this other trade, I think it does open up some new possibilities for what Byram might bring back. So it's a busy start to this week in Buffalo, and I think more trades to come there. And I'd say similarly in Utah, they're positioned well to, I think add another defenseman in free agency if they can. I would expect them to be taking, a swing there. While acknowledging that there's not a ton necessarily for them to bid on. So if they go for someone like an Aaron Ekblad and don't, they don't get him, or if Ekblad resigns in Florida, maybe there isn't a lot of shopping left to do, and we're talking about trades. But they want to be a playoff team in Utah next season. We saw them take, I think, a positive step in their first year in that city, but they're looking for impact players now, and they have the assets to get it, because the end of the Coyotes regime, if you recall, they stockpiled a whole bunch of picks and they made a lot of selection too, so they have prospects. And so I think they're positioned to be one of the teams that's wheeling and dealing this weekend.
Yeah, Utah is going to be really, really good, I think, in the years to come because of this. I think Bill Armstrong's doing a really good job there. Moving along with Chris Johnston from The Athletic and TSN. In fact, he's a little bit away from recording his latest Insider Trading with Pierre LeBrun and Darren Dreger. You can follow him, by the way, at Reporter Chris on the X machine. Marco Rossi is somebody that we've written a lot about here, and it's very clear that right now in this cap world, a lot of teams are willing to take him on, but they don't want to give up much. It just feels like everybody's got money, and they're not willing to give the Wild any sort of equivalent type of player. And it looks like the Wild are going to have to figure out to get a way to get a contract done with him. But do you think this is going to be sort of a new trend in the league? Now that the cap goes up and up, it used to be 4 or 5 teams every summer that could really do anything. Now it's going to be 32. And it's actually going to be, I think, harder to place players, to, get signed, you're going to have to outbid teams and things like that. It just feels like we're actually hitting a new world where it's going to be harder for teams to get guys.
Yeah, we're moving into a new cycle. You know, it's hard to always know or be able to predict where it's moving, but I think without question, when you're going to have a league probably in 2 or 3 years' time where there's only going to be a handful of teams that might even spend the cap at that point. I mean, when we have $110 or $113 million salary cap, I'm not sure how many teams around the league will even be going right to the ceiling, whereas, you know, a vast majority of the league until recently has been cap teams. That's where some of that LTIR nonsense that you were talking about came in, I think, is because everyone was looking for ways to get better. You know, Rossi is an interesting case. I mean, we're also at this offseason where nobody is flat out rebuilding. I mean, I'd say the closest is the Pittsburgh Penguins to doing that, you know, in terms of just sheer trading away useful veteran players and getting younger and doing what teams do when they're in that mode. But, you know, a lot of the other teams have been at the bottom of the standings, the Chicagos, the Anaheims, San Jose. I mean, those teams I'm not saying are all of a sudden going to be world beaters, but, you know, they're not in a mind where they're trying to get the first overall pick next year, as much as everyone loves Gavin McKenna, who is the top ranked pick for 2026. You know, and so you just have a lot of teams not looking to get any worse. And so I think a lot of the Marco Rossi deals were a little more futures based in terms of teams looking to add Rossi, but not wanting to remove much from their current day roster. And obviously that didn't work for the Wild, because the Wild are in a spot where they're trying to rebuild. I mean, this is a specific circumstance. And so, you know, I think that what Bill Guerin ran into there is something a lot of his counterparts are the same when they're looking to move players. Is it's just hard to find those fits right now. I don't know how long it'll last, or I hope it's not the start of a new trend, because I do think player movement is a good thing for the league and obviously creates a lot of excitement in the markets. But, you know, this is a strange period of time where no one is trying to be bad. The funny part about that, Michael, I had a GM point out to me this week. He thinks that means that the few firings are coming next year because everyone internally is telling their owners, "Hey, we're going to take a step this year. We're going to be good." But you know, the math or the numbers would suggest that there's going to be some bad teams again, and no one's planning on being bad. And so maybe it'll be a bad year a year from now for some GMs whose teams underperform.
Yeah, without a doubt. Mitch Marner is one guy that we know is moving on from Toronto. You've been writing about him forever. And obviously, I think if you look back maybe 2-3 years ago, they probably should have made the decision then. Now they're losing him for nothing. There's a lot of belief out there that he could even sign a short-term deal. Maybe, you know, teams, we know that Carolina went after him at the trade deadline as you broke, and he wouldn't waive his no trade at that point to go with them. We know they're going to try to make a swing again. You know, Vegas is the one team, especially if Petro is going to go under the knife for his hip, and they could have an LTIR situation. They could be a team that's looking after him. What do you hear right now with Marner?
Well, you know, certainly Marner's in a great position. I think he's sort of one of one on the market, and you know, he's going to be able to pick his spot. I mean, clearly he likes the idea of Vegas. You know, I think he would love the idea of going to Dallas if that could work. Right now, I don't see how that would make sense from the Stars' end of the equation, just because of the cap challenges involved there. But certainly, you know, Mitch Marner's made the decision to move on from Toronto, and you know, I think he's going to take his time when we get to free agency. I mean, reminds me a little of way back when you had Suter and Parise, you know, arrived to Minnesota. If you recall, Michael, it wasn't right on July 1st. They were both, you know, free agents with some leverage in that deal. It wouldn't surprise me if Marner's in a similar situation where he takes some time to wade through the offers, maybe even go visit a city or two, if that's what he wants to do. But at this point, I'd say Vegas is probably the favorite. But you know, nothing is done until it's done, and teams, you know, can't sign these players until 11 year time Central on you know, July 1st. And so, you know, some things can change between then and now. Maybe someone steps up with an offer he doesn't see coming, or maybe even hears something in a pitch meeting that happens after he officially hits the open market. But you know, at this point, I would say if you're handicapping it, you're going to say he's most likely to be a Golden Knight, because the Golden Knights always find a way to get the top players. I mean, that's been part of their DNA. Kelly McCrimmon and his staff have done a wonderful job, always, you know, finding the cap room, making the moves necessary to be bidding for top free agents or making big trades to help their team. And you know, at this hour where it's, you know, can't be done, my expectation is they're going to do it again.
Last couple for you, Chris. Patrick Kane is somebody that you don't hear anything about right now. You know, we're always talking Giroux, and up until re-signing today, Jamie Benn and Tavares and players like that. What do you hear on Patrick Kane? And you, actually, if you can add in Tavares also, because we know if he's on the open market, the Wild are going to go after him, I would assume.
Yeah, Kane's going to be interesting. He has been of a mind, I think, where Detroit's been a fantastic fit for him hockey-wise and personal-wise for his family. And so, last I'd heard on him is that he was still kind of a mind to remain in Detroit. And last year he did actually go right down to the wire before ultimately re-signing with the Red Wings. So that could still happen. But if he goes to market, I think a lot of people will be in the market for Patrick Kane. It's been kind of, for me, that the old guys had their moment in this most recent Stanley Cup final. A lot of players on the other side of 30, certainly even a few on the other side of 35, were key contributors to the Panthers and the Oilers, in the biggest games of the year. And, Patrick Kane still does something that is valued around the league. He puts up points. He's a good power play guy. And so, I think he'll have a lot of people knocking at his door if he gets to July 1st. I'm not sure yet if he's going to get there. With Tavares, I don't expect him to get to market. From what I've heard, there's been a little bit of positive movement in the last 24 hours between him and the Maple Leafs. And, quite frankly, the Leafs need at least one more center, including Tavares, on the roster. If they lost him, they'd be in the market for two. And I think that might be too much to overcome, especially given that they're preparing now for life after Mitch Marner. So, I would be shocked if it went off the rails between now and Tuesday. I do think that the Leafs are likely to get a deal done with John Tavares, who wants to stay here. This is his hometown. And he's got a family and all those types of things. So, it does sound like he's really close to a deal, whereas Kane, I haven't heard too much either. And, I wouldn't be surprised if the Leafs are one of the teams calling him if he does get to July 1st and doesn't have a contract.
Yeah, and maybe Minnesota. Brock Besser, last one for you, Chris. I actually texted a little bit with him today. He's out in Italy and coming back here on Monday, right before free agency. I think Nick Kyprios might have misspoke a little bit last week by saying the Wild are close to coming to terms with Besser. One, that's not allowed. And two, it's really not true. I mean, even if there was tampering, it really is not true. Like, it is totally up in the air where he's going to sign. I'd actually put it at less than 50-50 of him coming here. We'll see where it goes. But do you hear anything on Besser? Because it certainly feels like he's going to have many options, but very different types of options, like short-term deals from here, long-term deals from here, high AAVs from here, that type of stuff.
Yeah, and it's a good time to be a free agent if you're Brock Besser. I mean, the cap is going up. It used to be that players all wanted lots of security. I mean, I think there's a case to be made. Maybe doing a shorter deal isn't the worst thing for him, too. I mean, that would give him a chance to potentially go back to bat again at some point in the near future, also leave his options open. But I'm with you. I think, there's not a lot of goal scoring on this free agent board. I mean, if we remove Tavares, which I kind of just did with my last answer, at 38 goals last year, I mean, you get to Brock Besser pretty quickly next in terms of goals scored last year among potential free agents. So I think he's going to have a lot to consider. Some good teams, teams like Carolina, I think could make sense. I don't know if he'd want to go to Winnipeg, but the Jets just came off a President's Trophy winning season. I could see them knocking at his door, and the list will go on and on and on from there. And so, must be nice just chilling in Italy right before you sign this big contract that he's going to next week. But good for him. I think he's put himself in great position to cash in and get a change of scenery and, probably be a little bit more of a frontline player for whoever he signs with.
Yeah, I remember Eric Holla during the year that Vegas came in. I remember the Wild traded him, and I got in touch with him. He was in like Caprice or Cyprus or I forget where he was. He was somewhere over there. It must be nice. Hey, Chris, I really appreciate it. Did you get your run in yet?
Yes, sir. I went first thing this morning because I knew it would be a busy news day. So.
Yep. How many days in a row for you now?
I just passed 1,900 days in a row, so that is a little more than 5 years.
That's unbelievable. That is truly unreal. So congratulations on that. Chris Johnston, you can read him on X at Reporter Chris, but obviously at The Athletic, and you can see him on TV at TSN as well. Talk to you soon, Chris.
Okay, pal. See ya.
Yep, that is Chris Johnston, my partner in crime at The Athletic. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to the NHL draft. It's this weekend, tomorrow night, round 1 on Saturday. Rounds 2 to 7. The Wild have 5 picks on Saturday, none tomorrow night. The man that runs that draft table, and this year it's going to be here in Minnesota, is Judd Brackett. We'll be right back with him.
My name is Desiree, and I'm a first-generation college student.
I'm Zach. I'm undecided in my major, and I'm a catcher.
This message was sent to you.
$500 down the toilet along with your performance. You are worthless.
Get the hell off the field before you lose me any more money you saw in
This is wrong.
I'm more than a bet.
Stop harassing college athletes over a bet. Learn more at morethanabet.org.